Welcome to the data analysis end-to-end project where we're going to be looking at analyzing some Florida retail data shop. And we're going to be looking at how sales, weather, and customer demographics all interact. We're going to build a dashboard, develop SQL, and create a dashboard. So the business context here is that we have 4 retail shops in Florida in the Miami, Orlando, and Tampa, Jacksonville area. Sales are strongly influenced by weather, and then management wants to understand drivers of customer demand. So, of course, we have a problem statement, and the problem statement is daily sales fluctuate, but leadership lacks clarity on why. We need to help them understand how weather and customer demographics impact performance of our shops, and we're going to provide some insights on improved planning, staffing, and promotions. So here's the goal. The goal, provide those insights to improve, those 3 points that we just described. Our approach is we're going to gather and clean some sales, weather, and survey data that's going to be put in a database. Once we do that, we're going to develop some SQL and join it for a unified data set that we're going to analyze and pipe into Power BI. So our analysis objectives are ultimately to link the sales data with weather patterns and survey demographics, identify any correlations between those factors, and compare shop performance and seasonal patterns overall, and then build a foundation of in our dashboard. We won't probably do any predictive modeling. We might save that for another video. Expected outcomes are to find out what the drivers of customer demand are, insights on the single male and female shopping patterns that we'll find in the survey data, look at the shop level comparisons and our sales data, and then have the dashboard ready for view by our management team. And lastly, if you want to get ahead and you want to just go ahead and do your analysis and answer these dashboard questions, these are what we are going to provide the business. We want to know how strongly do temperature and rainfall affect daily sales, which shop performs the best and why, and who are our customers, and are they family versus single, male versus female, and how does this change over time? And are there predictable patterns in the sales, and what actions would you take based on the insights? So if you want to get ahead, go ahead and do this. And leave your answers in the comments. That would be really cool. And also, we're going to go over the visuals that we're going to use. So I'll answer all these questions at the end of the analysis. Okay, let's go over and get our database management system and Power BI. So I'm going over to Google. You can see here I have download Power BI. Just download this. It's very easy. It's free. You don't need to sign up. It's the desktop version, so you can just run that. And then I am going to go over, and you can see I can you can just type in download MySQL. And let's say download MySQL installer. Probably take us exactly where we want. And then you can see download MySQL installer. This is going to take you here. You're just going to download this version. And you want to use the full installation, because the full installation is going to give you all of the tools that come with it, like SQL Workbench. Now, you don't need to log in. You don't need to sign up. You can just go down to this link. And then you're going to download this. I've already downloaded it. Just use the full installation. Follow the instructions, and what it's going to give you is MySQL and MySQL Workbench. It takes a while to download. So let's go over to my installation. I'm going to type in MySQL. And you can see what pops up is MySQL Workbench. And what MySQL Workbench is the GUI or the platform that sits on your database management system that will allow you to build a database. So you can see here's welcome to MySQL Workbench. You can see here's my local instance. So this is what you're going to be presented with. You also are going to be presented with giving your instance a different admin or and password, but you can see it's a local host, and this is the port. And then I just left mine as root. But see here, as in connections, you can add other connections that you want. You can use a different connection name and a different password. It's up to you, but I'm leaving mine as the default. So what I'm going to do is click into my local, and you can see I'm presented with a password. You are going to be giving yours a password. So I have my password. And you can see what that presents us with is a database management system. So I have some saved query here. You have here are the databases that you have access to. And you can see where it says new schema, which is a database. Now, the first thing we want to do is create our database, which is going to be the schema. We're going to right click into that area. And then what we're going to do is click create schema. Create schema allows us to create the database that we want. So I'm going to call mine retail for just ease. And then I'm going to click apply. And then you can see it actually shows us the command here, create schema, and it's called retail. I'm going to hit apply and then finish. And now we need to click apply again, it looks like. Oh, it already applied. You can see the command here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to my schemas. And you can see a refresh button here. I'm going to hit refresh. And then now you can see our retail schema there. Now we need to add our files or tables to that schema. So I'm going to show you that there's no tables in there at the moment, but we're going to add them. So let's get our files. Let's navigate over to my files. And here they are. And I have three files. We have the sales for the 2 years. We have our survey data, and we have our weather data. So let's take a look at the sales data. So you can see we have the date, the shop name, customer, and let's close these, and then the sales USD. So what we want to do is import this table into our MySQL server. So let's close this and let's go back over to MySQL, which is, did I close it by mistake? Well, let's just open it back up. And let's expand this. And then now under retail, what I want to do is highlight retail. And then we're going to right click it. And you can see there's options here. So we want to be able to import some data. So I'm going to go over to this option, table data import. I believe this is the best way to do it. Then we're going to go over to browse and let's navigate over to the Miami shops. I am going to get my sales data, double click it. Now I'm going to go to next and we want to create the table. It's in the retail database. And then I'm going to call it sales. We don't need to call it sales for 2 years. We can just call it sales. And then next. And then what happens is we see the encoding UTF-8 that's usually associated with Excel. And then here are all the column types. And here's a preview of our data. We hit next. And it shows us what's going to happen. And then we hit next again. And now it's going to import that data. Okay, it's finished importing. Let's hit next and then finish. You can see that we have 2,924 records imported. And now we can go back up to retail, database. We go to tables, we click the arrow, and you can see we have sales. And now that we have sales, what we can do is we can right click it. And then let's say select the first 1,000 rows. And then you can see you get your 1,000 rows there. And we can actually bring that in. Now, the next steps we want to do is just simply bring in the other tables in the same method. So let's do that very quickly. So again, you're going to go up to your schema, right click. We're going to go to table import and then go over Miami Shops. I'm going to bring in the survey data. Next. And then I'm just going to call it survey for ease. Next. We get our preview. Next. Next. And you can see all of the commands are recorded at the bottom here. That's finished. Let's go over to next and then finished. And then one more. As you see, it's not there yet. If you don't see it, just hit the refresh there and now you can see it. Well, let's get our final table. So we go over and we go to table import. We go to browse. And now we want to get that weather data. Go to next. And just want to call this weather. Hit next again. Next. We already saw the preview. And let's bring that in. Okay, finished. Finished. And we can hit refresh. And now you can see we have all three of our tables ready to go. So now we can develop SQL that we're going to pipe over into Power BI. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get all of the columns from our sales table. So I'm going to just click into this and we can see all of our tables, but you can see we have our database and sales table here. And let's call that S. I believe we can do that without an as in MySQL. And then instead of bringing everything back with this wildcard or star, let's bring out S and let's bring in the date. And if we run this, where's the run? You can see if we click this, we can run it. And that's going to bring back the table. Now, I need to actually see all of the columns. So here, what I'm going to do is I can run the wildcard again, or I can just click the columns here and we can see them. So let's get all of the columns that we want. And I'm going to hit shop ID, and that should pop up, comma, S, shop name, And let's get the customers. So I'm just hitting tab to auto complete that. And I also am going to get the sales USD. So s.sales USD. And I believe that is everything we want. Now, we would be okay to just have this, and I'll run that again, and you can see that all of those columns come up. But I also want the sales per customer. So here I can just say uh, sales USD divided by S dots customers. And I'm going to call this sales per customer. And let's put a comma there and run this. And now you can see we get sales per customer there. Now we could also wrap this in a round, I believe, in MySQL, and then just throw a 2, and let's see if that works. Oh, and it looks like it threw an error, and you can see everything here. So that's not the right function. So we can just deal with that when we're in Power BI. Um, so we have sales per customer. Now, we also want to bring in the other tables that we have. So let's close this sales table here, and let's open the survey table. Now you can see in the survey table, if I hit the columns, we also have a date. So what I'm going to do is join this table here, which is our sales table, with this survey table. So, and we can do that. So since our sales is our main table, we can do a left join, which is going to bring back all of the records that are going to be present in the left, or you can do an inner join, which only brings back all of the records in both tables. So let's do left join. And then now we want to join what? We want to join our survey table, and we need to join that on or using. So since we both have a date here, I'm going to put using, and I believe we can just do it this way. And then now let's also bring in um, our survey table, and let's call our survey table, it's both S's, so let's just call this SU. And let's say SU brings in our percent male. And it looks like this is not coming in because you see this error. That means we need to fix it. And let's also make sure that we have everything aligned. And I'm just going to run this. Looks, and you can see there's an error here. Using date. So the error I made here is I think it needs this retail here to indicate the database. Usually sometime if you click into the database, it will know that, but if it doesn't, you might need to specify it. So let's see if that's the issue. Yes, it was. So now we have the percent male, and we did this using date. So let's get the percent female, PCT. And also let's get um, the percent family, and we can call it SU. Now, in some database management systems, you don't need to add this table name. It's just better and kind of a standard practice. So now I'm going to get the final, which is the single here. So I'm just going to go down and get that. And then if I run this, we should be okay. Yep. Now we have the percent that we want. And essentially what we're going to get here is we'll get the percent of male and female and the percent of family versus male. And then what we can do is multiply by our customers to get an idea of the type of user that we have. Now, let's bring in our final table there. And we can also left join again and use retail. And let's bring in our last data there, which is the weather. And I'm going to bring in the weather. You can see it pop up. And let's call that W. And I also am going to join that to our date. And so I want to left join weather using date. And because we only brought this date in, it should merge to that. But while we are doing that, let's just get our weather table here. And we go into retail, we go into tables, weather, and then the columns here. And we want the average temperature. So W times average temp. And looks like that's in Fahrenheit. And let's make sure there's a comma there. And let's run this, see if there's any issues. No, we have the green check mark, and then you can see we have average temp there. So now let's just fill out the other columns. So we want the precipitation, right? So W dot precip in inches. And we can bring in other tables, other columns, I mean, such as whether it rained is rain that pops up. So that's a good quality check for us. And then let's get the last one, which is humidity. And of course, you could change the name of these. Now I'm going to run that. This should all work. Oh, we forgot something. I forgot to put this one is not correct. Looks like. There you go. Now let's run this. And now we have this large table that we can bring into Power BI. Now, maybe there's other things that you want to do, like create new columns. So we did create a column here called sales per customer, but let's play around with the date here. I'm going to put a column here. And what we want to do is look for a function that we can use. And I can't remember the function, but it might be, yeah, we go have a function. So you can write day name, and then we're going to put the date here. And then we're going to call this as day of week. And comma, we can run that. You can see we get the day of the week there. Now, I also want to indicate whether there's a weekend or not, because this might be good for the business. So I think we have a weekday function. And let me just show you what the weekday function does. So we can put date, and we got a comma. Let's put a comma here, and then run this. And you can see we get the day of the week there. So what we can do now is says case when. So we want to know, like an if function, case when, weekday in. And so Sunday is 6. and Saturday is 5. So in 5 or 6, then weekend, else weekday, and then end. And let's call that, I call them is weekend. I don't, maybe that's not a good name, is weekend as is weekend. Oops. As here, as. So essentially that's going to tell us what the weekends. Let's try to run that to see if there's any errors. No, there's not. So you can see there's a weekend and a weekday, and that gives us our query. Now, one of the last things we can do is create a view for this. So what does a view do? It's just a save query. So we have this long query. So let's see if we can create and replace the query. So create or replace view as, let's just call this table joined. See if this runs. No, let's see what's happening. Check the syntax. I think maybe I'm forgetting this again to indicate see if that works. Create or replace view. No, that's not it. Oh, I see the issue. Create or replace view, then as. So this is the right syntax. You can see it looks fixed. Create or replace view, retail table join into the retail database as, and let's run that. That did it for us. Um, so we should be good to go. And you can see now we have views here, and then we have table join. So the view represents our temp table that now we can pipe into Power BI. All right, so let's go over to Power BI, and here we are. Now, we can't directly connect to MySQL without some connector. So let me just show you what happens. So if you see here, you go to Get Data in Power BI, you go down to More, and let's pull up MySQL here. And if I click into that, you can see what it says. This requires one or more additional components to be installed before we get this to work. This is not very hard. So let's open up our browser and let's go to MySQL Power BI OB. What is OBDC connector? All right, so that's going to pop up, and this is what we actually want. Um, Power BI. Let's see. My database connector. This one will work. So I'm going to go here and click into this link. And you can see here is the connector. So all you want to do is download this. You can choose any one of these versions will work. So it's a ODBC connector, and just download, and then you just click it, initiate your download, and once you have finished downloading that, it's going to give you, let me show you, it's going to give you, I think it's called Data Center. So it's called Data Sources, ODBC Data Sources. You're going to click into that. And what we need to do is set up a source here based on that driver. So you're going to be presented with this little window here. You're going to go to Add, and then you're going to go down and you're going to find that driver that you downloaded. You can see ODBC here, and you click into that. Then you need to name it. I'm going to call mine PBI connector. I've already set this up, but I'll show you how to do it. You can give it the description that you want. And now what you need to do is you need to add everything that is set up from your database, MySQL database. Now, MySQL database is called localhost, as you saw. And then you should have a name here for your username. Remember, mine was, I can't actually remember. I think it was called root. And what I can do is just go find out. Um, you can see I have this open. Let's see. I'm just going to close this down and open it back up because I've already forgotten my SQL workbench. Start that back up. I think my name was root, and I just used the regular password. But I just want to take you through how it should look for you. Yeah, so this is root. This is your local host. That's the name of my server. And if you go back over, you can see here I'm using root localhost here as the server. 3306 is the port 3306, and then my password I am going to put in and hit OK. And now click. You can see I have two connectors there. And it looks like I used one Unicode and one ANSI. Both of those should work. So then you go back over to Power BI, and then let's go over it, and then go to More once you hit Get Data. And here, I want you to go to Other, and then let's use, look for ODBC. Let me just search ODBC. Okay, so then I'm going to click into this. And then you can, this is going to be where we have our files. And this is the connector. And as you see there, here are my two connectors. Let's try this first connector that I just made. And then you can actually make this more advanced, right? You can put your SQL statement here, or we could just bring in the database that we're looking for. So let's just start with the optional. Let's say OK, because I want to make sure this works. Now, here's your database that you are going to connect to. This is a username and password. So I'm going to use my username and password. And then I'm going to connect. And you can see this brings up the same tree that you have in your MySQL database. So I'm going to go to retail. And then you can see we have this view that we created called table joined that we just created. And you can see the preview here. So I'm just going to click onto that. And then I'm going to, you can do two things. You can load this or go to transform data. The only difference is that it's going to take you to Power Query. But let's just go ahead and load it. Now we can see that syncing up. Now, in the right-hand side here, we have all of our columns, our data types, and you can see now we probably need to do a little bit of work before we start to make our dashboard and do our analysis, because you can see that the date here is not in a date format, and these symbols are going to tell you what type of data type it is. So we can see these sum symbols are going to indicate numbers or something numeric. If it's nothing there, that means it's probably categorical. But we should have a calendar here for our dates. So that is something we are going to work on fixing. Let's go back over to our presentation and look at the last slide, which has our dashboard requirements. And let me just make this a bit bigger. Here. So here are the dashboard questions. So typically you'll send out a questionnaire if someone asks you for a dashboard saying what questions do they really want answered in a dashboard. And you'll usually get something back. You can even ask them to suggest a visual, but let's go through the process of like maybe coming up with a visual ourselves so we don't have to waste any time. So the first question, and I'm not going to be able to write on it like that, so let's answer this. So the first question is how strongly do temperature and rainfall affect daily temperatures? So this could be done with maybe like a combo chart with temp and sales on the same chart, like with a dual axis. So let's just say a line chart combo or dual axis. Now you can come up with your own visuals, but this is kind of the way I'm thinking about it. And okay, so which shop performs the best and why? So I think a bar chart here, or like a clustered bar chart. Let's say clustered bar chart, maybe with sales over time, could work. But we can change this. Let's put over time. And who are our customers? Family, single, male, female. I think this is fine to do in either a pie chart or either a bar chart. Like a maybe we can say stacked bar, maybe stacked bar chart. Uh, are there predictable seasonal patterns? We're going to see this in the line chart anyway, so I think that's fine. And then what actions would you take based on the insights? So let's just call that bullet point, PowerPoint maybe, PowerPoint slide. All right, so those are our kind of visuals we'll stick with. So let's pop back over to Power BI and kind of get started. So here's Power BI. Now, the first thing I want to do is kind of handle some of the data types here. I need to get the date in the right format. So you're going to go over to the top ribbon and you're going to click Transform Data. And you can see the date here is like ABC. Let's change that into a date by clicking that ABC here and going down to date. And you can see now that it's changed type over in your applied steps here. There are other things we could do here depending on what you are looking for. We could multiply all our sales by the percent of male and female based on that survey information. But we just want to answer these questions quickly and come up with a very quick dashboard. So I'm just going to load this. And now you should see on this right side, this date have a different icon. Now you see it's a calendar icon. So now what we can do is we can start exploring our data. We have our data based on time. So if I just click into that one, you can see a visual pops up here. It's just a table. And what we're going to be presented with is this hierarchy where it has year, quarter, month, and day. And that's fine. We can change that in a bit. And the first thing I want to be able to look at is sales USD. And we can see that our sales are broken down here. And now I'm clicking into this table and I'm going to go over to the right side where it says visualization. And I'm going to click this line graph. And you can see it's going from year. But now one thing about Power BI, we can travel down this hierarchy in multiple ways. So you can see we can expand down one level here. So if we wanted to see sales by quarter, we can see it like that. We could see sales by month, and then we could see sales by day. So automatically, what do you see? We can see there's a big seasonal pattern for our sales where it goes up, back down, up again. So we can see the months here and quarter three are our good sales months, and you can see quarter three here also. And then our low quarters here are in this quarter, which is quarter two, around those April months. So now we already have a visual we can use as our like main visual. And I think this should be the main visual. Now, we do need to deal with how we are going to see how temperature affects this. So what we can do is go over here, and temperature is very important, right? So we could go over and find temperature here. Where is it? Oh, here, up at the top. And then you can see that a temperature line is there. And the reason why we can't see it is because it's not dual axis, right? So what we want to do is be able to put that on a different axis. So we'll go up here, and then you can see that paintbrush, and then I'm going to secondary axis here. Wait a minute, I don't even think I need to do that. The second here's in the new, sorry. This is new Power BI, so you don't need to worry about that. We can just drag it down to here to the secondary axis. And now what can you see? You can see temp and sales both mirror each other. Now, this is fine with the way we see it. We could also think about changing that secondary axis to something else that would be like a combo chart. So you can see here we have this line chart here, and I believe we can change the secondary axis here. No. So what we can do is change the visual. So I'm going to click that visual, go back, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this visual here. And you can see what that gives us is we can see temperature and our sales. Now, this looks a little less dramatic. Plus, we need to maybe instead of having our axis broken down that way, what we can do is click here into the x-axis, go down to date. So what we're going to do is essentially eliminate the hierarchy. So I'm going to go to date. And now you can see how that visual looks. So it's up to you. I'm not a big fan of this. It's not too impressive, but what we can see is the sum of the average temperature, which this can be a little bit confusing. So let's turn that average temperature into different names. Now, you might be looking at the sum here and you're like, hey, that should be an average. Now, that's not going to make much of a difference here. So if I go here and I go to average, that's all that's going to happen. We're going to take that average temperature and turn it that way. I think it kind of distracts a little bit from the visual here. So I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards this dual line visual. So we can both see temperature and sales go up at the same time. So I'm going to leave that here. I'm going to put that right in the middle because that answers our main question. So we know that as temperature increases, we see sales increase. Now, you can play around with those lines, colors if you want, but I'm just going to leave that right here as we create our other visuals. So the other question was, which shop performs the best? So let me just leave that here and let's go down to shops. So we have I think it's the shop ID. And that's going to give me, no, we don't want shop. We want the shop name. So click back out, click shop name, and then I'm going to go into our sales USD. And we can already see which one performs better. You even might want to see this done over time. So for example, we can go over and click date, right? And then we get rid of we change that into the date. And then you could move the shop name over to the legend. But you can see what happens here if we get a lot of information here. We could turn this into an area chart. And you could see which one performs better that way. I'm not a big fan of that either, but it will give you the daily sales based on each one of those, if that's something you want to answer. However, all I'm concerned about is which shop is doing better overall. So I'm going to get rid of the date, and then I am going to pull shop name back to the x-axis. I'm going to turn that back into a clustered bar chart, and there we go. Because I'm just looking for a very simple, easy to follow dashboard. So now we have 2 questions answered. We can see that the Miami shop is the killer. And we also may want to see not just sales, but we also have our sales per customer. So if I take this off and then I turn this into an average, so I'm just clicking to that down arrow. And now you can see Miami Beach is still there with the highest sales at this amount, $18, but Orlando is right next to it. And then you can see when we had, let me just show you again. When we just had sales, we can see a similar format, Miami, Orlando, and Tampa. And then if I go back and I get our sales per customer, average sale. You can see Miami, Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly change this a little bit. So I want my labels here. So I'm just going to turn the labels on. And I'm going to get rid of that x-axis, the y-axis there. So I'm going to click in the y-axis here. And I'm going to turn the values off. And that's, for me, that's good enough. Okay, so now we have two charts in our dashboard where we can get these set into smaller formats, but we already answered two of our questions. So who is our customer? So if we're thinking about how to build a dashboard, it usually goes from top things are most important, and then the bottom things are a little less important. So I still think we can put our pie chart here. I'm going to use this donut chart, and then I am going to get the male and female percentages. Now, this is if we have male and female here. Let me just show you what happens. So, and then I put male and female. You can see this is counting the amount of values. So what we need to do is we need to take the average of both of these. And now you can see you have like 49%, 48% male and 51% female. Now, if we go over to this table here, you can see that pretty much lines up with everything here. We're just taking the average of those particular columns. So I'm going to go back over, click into the visual here. Now, I'm going to keep that really small. And actually, what I'm going to do here is get rid of some of these things. So let's go over, and we don't need the legend, but we also want our labels to have all of the information. So the category, so let's say category and percent of total. Okay, so there we go. And that's the average. And we don't need to, keep writing average or let our stakeholders know. It doesn't really help. So let's go back over and let's just call this, by clicking into the values here, I'm just going to write female for female. And then here I'm going to write male. So now we have this easy donut chart to follow. So then I'm going to just copy that because I want the kind of same size here. And what I'm going to do now is get the family percent of single families, and that should be easy. We should be able to take that off. So we got single, and then we got family. And then you can see here, we can go back to average and average here. And we can see that split up pretty well also. And then if you want to change the size of two things, you can click both of them. So let's check our data. So you can see the average single parent percentage of family, and then average of the single is here. Now, let's go back to our visual. So we have 1, 2, 3, things answered. And now the next thing we want to answer, are there any predictable seasonal patterns? We already know who are our customers. So let's start organizing this very quickly. So I want to keep my line chart as big as possible. And so what I'm going to do is move this over a bit so it's right in the taking the majority of the space. I'm going to leave these two here right under. And then I'm going to leave my bar chart here. And it might be better to switch these because if we're thinking about what's more important, I think these are less important than this. So I'm just going to move this over here and then move these over. And I'm also going to make them smaller. And then I also want to change the titles here. All right, so I'm going to get these. Now, there's an easy way you can um, get these the same size. You can see, click this, go over to your paintbrush, go to General, and where is it? Properties. And you can see the size here. So this 218 to 298. So we can click into this one and we can just write, was it 218 to 291 to get those the same size. So then you don't have to struggle so much with getting everything to be the same size. So we can see that we have this. I'm going to pull this over a bit. And then let's update the name. So this is single and this is family. And I'm going to get rid of the information here, like the the legend here or the axis title. So I'm going to go to the y-axis and then I'm just going to get rid of that title. And then I'm going to get the x-axis also, get rid of that title, just so it looks a little bit better. Now, I don't mind. And then one thing you can do here is, as you see, I kind of want to make this a little bit smaller, but the smaller you make it, you can see that this is not looking that great. So what I can do is click into that, go over to, well, at least I hope I can do this. Yes, so for the minimum we can change. So you can see it's about $18, $17, $16, and $15. And we can change that to dollar signs if you want. So I'm going to make the minimum here. Let's try 10. And now you can see it's a little bit more dramatic. And I'm going to even go 11. So then we can see everything. I'm going to keep this here, I think all the way to the right. And then what I want to put here is just some summary stats of how much our sales and customers are. So if you click into this, one of your cards, here or here, this is a new card. So I'm just going to click this one, the old card, and then I want the total customers. So we get here, it's going to be our total customers. And how much of our total customers, how much are they worth? So I'm just going to copy by pressing Control C and hitting this again. And then I'm going to turn that into another box. And I'm going to get our sum of USD. So I'm going to just pull this over and replace that. So that is going to be our total sales. And now what we can do is very easily we should probably give ourselves a title. So I'm just going to press insert here, and I want to get a shape. So I'm going to go shape, and then I'm going to get a line. And then you can see it gives me a line here. Oh, we don't need that. And I'm going to put this. Why is that doing that? Enter email address. Don't need that. I'm going to get the line, and I'm going to pull this. Cancel. Not sure why it's popping up. I must have clicked into something. Sign in to enhance the work better. So let's see if that pops up again. I must have clicked into something. Well, it looks like it's gone. Okay, so then I get this line here. No, every time I click this line, it's doing it. I have no idea why that's happening, but let's just ignore it. I am going to give this a title. So let's go to enter text box. And here I'm going to go up, and in my text box, I'm going to go to Miami retail shops. And let's make this bigger. You can just make it bigger here. And then and make that bold. And one thing we can do now is just call this sales. So you can clean this up on your own. But the thing that we can do now is, as you see, we give our title, we go from important to less important. And one of the things that you can do is like you can see that here are all of our customers, here are all our sales. And let's see if we can change the card value here to the display units. And it's in millions, but I want to see if we can change the value, but we can do that later. We can just go over to transform data, and we can go into our Power Query editor, and let's go over and find our sum of sales, which is here. And then we can click into this, and we can turn that into a dollar sign. And then we just hit close and apply. And that should give us what we're looking for. Wow, I do not know why that's happening. Sales, did it update? So we go back over to sales, and it did not change. But let's go over to home, format, data. I'm going to click into this. There we go. So click into this value here, and then turn that into a dollar sign. Oh, that's annoying. So now we have a dollar sign here. Let's clean this one up for our title. So click this paintbrush, and I want to go over to general title, and let's change the title here to just shops. We want to call that average sale by shop. And then let's put that in the middle here. I'm going to copy this line here. So I'm just going to copy it. Yes, the shape that's doing this. I'm not sure why. And I'm going to put V. I'm going to remove this and see if it stops the the little thing that pops up. Then let's try to insert it again. Maybe this is the reason. Yeah, so some reason that visual pops and it gives us this little thing here, but that's fine. Um, yeah, it's very irritating. So what I can do instead is here. No, I actually want that shape. So I'm gonna try here, and I'm just not sure why it's doing that, but let's cancel again. And I'm just gonna do this in the meantime and just not touch it anymore while I have it. And just move it up a little bit, and let's be done with this. Now I want to change the title here, go to general, and then sales in temperature. So we want to go to um, title. Let's go sales and temperature, and put that in the middle. Uh, Now you can we can definitely turn these into, let's put these, order these up, and you can see it lines up. You could put boxes around this if you want, just by going to all of the different effects here. You could change the background, you could change a visual border there, uh, anything you want to kind of make this dashboard pop. So you can see you can make this, and that might actually work a little bit better. I'm gonna have to find out the settings to turn that off. I'm going to make this line a little bit lined up with that. And I'm also going to put a visual border. So click into, what is it, General, Effects, and then go Visual Border. And you can see that looks a little bit better. And you can see this is filtering this. So let's just double click it. I'm going to So let's turn this off. I'm sure there's a setting here. So let's go to File, Options and Settings. Let's go to Options. There has to be a way because that's annoying. Okay. Okay, Options. Okay, maybe let's go to Preview Features here, and let's try to turn this off uh, because it might be interfering with things. So let's see if that works first. Yeah, disable, we might need to restart, but that's fine. So I'm going to add a box here. So click into that. Go to your General, Effects, Visual Border, and then let's do the same here. Maybe we can do both at the same time since it's the same visual. So double click, just right click, General, Effects, and then Visual Border on. And that gives us everything. And now we have our dashboard. Let's make sure everything's kind of aligned a little bit better. I like everything to kind of be the same size. So what we can do is just move these over a little bit. Let's put this here. Now you can definitely make this better, but the last thing we want to do is use a slicer. So go here and press slicer, and you can see a slicer pops up. The first slicer we want is a date slicer, and this is just a standard date slicer here, and we can put this over here. So let's move. So I'm going to press Control A to highlight everything. All that is still popping up. Um, I'll have to research how to get rid of that. And let's bring everything down except the slicer. So I'm going to click that slicer. Then I'm going to just bring everything down here. Oh my God, that is annoying. Okay. Yeah, so it seems it will not stop popping up. So let me try to go back in because this is getting annoying. Go to options and let's try options again. And I'm going to turn off for preview features here. I just want to make sure I don't want to share anything with on OneDrive, which is another online thing. And let's see if any other visual here. Enhance, help. No, we should be safe. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to save this. So let's say save. I'm going to save that into my documents. And then I'm just going to call this a Miami Retail Dashboard. And then I'm going to log out to see if that fixes the issue. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Then I'm going to open Power BI up again to see if those features uh, have stuck, where we don't keep getting that annoying response. And then I open my Miami dashboard. So now it's going to connect to our database and everything. Popping up. And now let's hope it worked. I'm going to bring everything down, bring everything down, bring everything down. So we have a little bit more room. Bring this down a little bit more. And click both of these and bring this down. Okay. And this stands to go a little bit bigger. And, okay. So there is a slicer there. We have a date slicer. And what we can do is when we move that slicer, you can see it's going to change our information. So if we wanted to look at a specific period, everything in that slicer would change. So you can also add other slicers here, such you remember that we have a weekend slicer, which will allow you to change the weekend. This is just a quick and easy dashboard. You can definitely play around with the formatting and everything, but this quickly answers your questions. It gives you all the information. What you should do is you should add the dollar sign here as you know how, and you can play around with colors here. So you can see home, and we can go to view. And then you see you can play around with all of the different default colors here if you want to get a better look, or you could do your own. But that's just a quick and easy dashboard that shows you how to connect MySQL and Power BI. But now we have a final thing we need to answer our questions. And this annoys me a little bit. So you just got to figure out how to make this bigger. Or I think here, because there's like an empty space there, I think you either want to make these bigger or add another categorical here. So let's go over to our Power BI and PowerPoint and see the questions that are going to be answered. So one thing we need to do is kind of answer the question, right? That we didn't say, we don't know what happens when it rains. So I'm just going to double click that slicer, and then I'm going to remove the date, and then I'm going to go to is rain. And I don't want this type of slicer because, it's just 0 and 1. What I want to do is go to slicer settings, and then I'm just going to put like let's say a drop down, so we can literally click on or off. So you can see when it's not raining is 0, and then when it's raining, we make a less money. We get almost half of our customers there. Now that's not very pretty. So what we can do um, is let's have our slicer here, but now let's go over to our model, and then let's go to transform data. And the final thing we want to do here is replace that value, right? So let's go over to is rain. And what we can do is we can highlight this line. We can go over to replace value. And then we want to find 0 and replace it with not raining. Well, they want a number value. Well, okay. So the first thing we probably need to do is change this into a text. Now, let's see if we can replace values by just right clicking. And let's call this not raining. Yes, so that works. You need to change it to text for 0. And then we need to right click, replace values, and call this raining. And let's close and apply. And then here we can, oh, it's 0. Looks like we missed one. Oh, so we just needed to click off there. Not raining, we can see that we have 489,000 customers for 8.3 million sales. And if we click into raining, you can see that it's only 3.5 and 209. And you could see, even if we look at our line here, we can see that definitely there's a lot less continuous sales there. So now you can click them off, and then we have our answers. And let's see. So then you have your dashboard. I'm just going to turn these into dollar signs, but you can see what happens. It went out a little bit long. So when we change that to a currency, it goes long. So let's just put 2 decimal places. And there we go. So that's just a quick and easy dashboard for your mind. I would love to see what you guys come up with and style your dashboard. That gives us a kind of quick and easy way to look at things. Let's go over to our answers for what we need to send or put in a PowerPoint slide. So let's pop back over to Power BI and see my analysis. And I also want to add some justifications for things. So here's the recommendations. And let's just make this a bit bigger. Okay, so here are my recommendations. Sales are shaped by weather. We saw that, right? We see the seasonal pattern, location, and customer mix. To maximize growth, managers must adapt operations to seasonal shifts. So that means like when we have down time and the off peak months, we should have less staff and customers. We know we're going to have less customers, so we shouldn't stock up on things also. Maybe have more sales during that period also. And then we should focus on those hot summer days because we saw the temperature. Rainy days, we saw that we had less customers. Expand Miami. Miami's our biggest market, so peak tourism months, so any of the peak months. And build loyalty for Jacksonville. Jacksonville was our low month. And target families on weekends and singles on weekdays. Now, we didn't look into that, but we are going to now. And also, when you send recommendations like this, you just shouldn't send it flat like this, so we're going to get some numbers. So let's go back over to Power BI. And what I'm going to do first, let me just show you about the weekday and weekend. So what you can do is just bring in weekend over to your filter pane. And you can click weekend, and then you can see there's a lot more variability, and also you can see just in the count here there's a lot more there's a lot less weekend days, so more than likely you can see that our weekends aren't our peak sales based on what we have there. Also, you can see the distribution of single and families change. So here's with the weekend highlighted here. And you can see we have more families on the weekend at that 51%. Now, that's not super significant, but it's still enough to help inform the business. Now, let's make another slide here. So I'm just clicking the plus sign. And what I want to do is I want to go get my dates. And then I want to get sales USD. And you can see we have this hierarchy here for our sales. But I want to choose not a table, but the matrix. And what the matrix will allow us to do is break everything up by quarter. So now we have this nice table that we could copy and paste or into our um, into our presentation, because it'll give us an indication about what we should expect for these different periods like quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four. And then we can also bring in that average sale per customer there. So I'm going to bring that in. And then I'm going to make it an average. And now, of course, if you want to style this table, you can go out, you can change the layout and the presets there. It's a lot you can do with these tables. I don't. I'm not going to get the subtotals there. You can see it by looking at it that way. I think we probably do need to keep the subtotals just for that. And maybe what we can do, choose a particular table layout. So I'm going to choose none for my table there, just so we have this. And now what you could do, you could just change the headings. So let's call this our value is average. This is not average. What happened? Oh, I put the wrong average, as you saw. So this should be sum, and this one should be average. There we go. Now we're in business. So you can definitely see here which one is the better one. So what I'm going to do, I think we can just, well, let's make sure our titles are good. So sales and then average. Let's just put per customer. We can explain that as an average sales per customer. There we go. You can definitely make this much bigger, right? Uh, but I think when we copy it over, it should be fine. But you can go into values. It's at 10 now. Let's make it 14. And if we're going to change this, we should also change all of the row headings and the columns headings to 14 and row headings to also to 14. Now I'm going to try to copy this directly. So Control C, and I'm going to go back over to my PowerPoint. And I'm going to try to stick this in, but it doesn't look like it's going to work. So we could just make an image of this. Flipping. I'm going to make a, oops. So we don't want that to, we don't want to show our, there we go. Take it, copy it, and throw it in our PowerPoint. So they have something to reference. I'm going to place that here. And then the only other thing I'm going to put in is our seasonal chart, which is here. Go over and then just get your just so it gives us a something to give them so they can ask questions. But of course, they do have the dashboard. So just dump that in there like that. And now you have a pretty good story and some information they can use to help them make their decisions. And they can look at our recommendations and back it up by the data that we've given them, right? Because we can definitely see, in the summer months here. Well, let's go back to our dashboard so we can see. We can definitely see here, right? We have the sales here are 1.5, the sales here are 1.3 and 1.2. And if we click into Q3, here are the summer months. So we see that this is definitely a good period. We can go to Q3 here, and you can also see that we're definitely doing better with sales comparing those two quarters. So that gives you an indication on how we came up with our analysis, how we came up with the strategic points that we're going to give our client, and then a format that we can give our client in terms of looking into our data. So this is a really good way to learn analysis end to end And I hope you learned a lot. And I would love to hear about your questions, dashboards, and definitely throw me a like if you've definitely gotten this far. Thank you.